Do you ever feel anxious or like you can't remember things? Does everything seem to irritate you? Are you experiencing tingling in your hands and feet? Well, whatever is happening up here or across your nerves could actually be caused by your consumption of gluten. Welcome to Frontline Health. I'm Dan Skorbach. Today we are looking at an article published on the Epoch Times by Dr. Skorbach, a world-renowned expert on autoimmune and neurological diseases. A lot of people think that symptoms of gluten sensitivity are felt in the gut, but actually that's not where most symptoms appear. For a long time now, researchers have known that most cases of gluten sensitivity show themselves in the brain. Some researchers have called gluten sensitivity a neurological disease. But why? Well, here's this paper, published in the World Journal of Gastroenterology 4 years ago. It says that out of all the food out there, gluten is the most potent trigger for neurological dysfunction and neurological autoimmunity. That's a pretty dire conclusion. Bread has been with us for thousands of years. Why is it now that it's a problem? Well, from the research that's out there, it's not so much that gluten itself is the problem. In part, it has to do with how our brain is connected to the gut. One paper published in Science highlights that the gut communicates with the brain on the overall state of the body, and whenever the gut experiences inflammation or food sensitivities, that can cause brain inflammation and can basically start damaging the brain. So, if your body is sensitive to gluten, well, most neurological literature shows that it primarily manifests as a neurological disease. There is published research that has found that inflammation in the gut from gluten sensitivity can lead to white matter lesions in the brain. These are areas of damage that can be seen in MRIs when the patient has neurodegenerative conditions like multiple sclerosis. Unfortunately, most doctors today overlook the impact of gluten on the brain. Neurologists typically don't test for gastrointestinal or food protein sensitivity, and they don't evaluate for celiac disease, as that is the domain of the gastroenterologist. But since most people with neurological problems don't have gut complaints, they never land in the office of a belly doctor. It gets even more complicated when you consider that wheat is made up of more than 100 different components that can cause a reaction. There are also foods that cross-react with gluten like dairy or other grains, which trigger inflammation because the immune system mistakenly thinks they are gluten. And the most alarming part is that there are proteins in the brain tissue that have identical amino acid sequences as gluten. This can cause the immune system to attack the brain tissue thinking that it's gluten instead. This can happen to the cerebellum in the brain, which is extremely sensitive to gluten. When the immune system attacks that part of the brain, the person develops anxiety, has poor balance, is easily overwhelmed, and is sensitive to sound and light. So, for many patients with neurological diseases, removing gluten from their diets can have a profound impact on their health. And for those who aren't willing to part with pizza and croissants, well, there's another factor to understand here. And that is the role of herbicides in wheat production. There's one that you probably heard of. It's called Roundup. It has been around in the US since the 70s and is the most used pesticide in the US. One of the problems with Roundup is its main ingredient, glyphosate. It's really harmful to the good bacteria in your gut. Also, evidence in the way glyphosate harms fish suggests that it may interfere with the breakdown of complex proteins in the human stomach. So when you eat that pizza slice with traces of glyphosate, it may prevent your body from digesting the gluten. And those larger fragments of wheat in your gut is what can trigger an autoimmune response, which according to Dr. Skorbach can damage your brain. And if you really dig deeper and try to find out just how much of Roundup is found in our food, well, the Alliance for Natural Health USA did just that. And here's what they found. The foods with the highest level of glyphosate were coming from oatmeal, bagels, bread, and wheat cereal. It was also found in eggs and milk, which suggests that the pesticide is entering the food chain and is building up in the tissue of the animals. Glyphosate was even found in organic foods like creamers and potatoes, although the concentration was small. If everything is contaminated with glyphosate and you're consuming it on a daily basis, then the bioaccumulation really adds up. You can see in this graph here the correlation of glyphosate usage in the US and the increase of celiac disease, which is an autoimmune disorder linked to gluten intolerance. So, what does this whole thing mean to you? If you're experiencing brain fog or any of these symptoms, you may want to take a break from bread and wheat and see if you feel any better. You could also try organic products since they don't use Roundup directly. So in theory, their exposure to glyphosate should be the lowest. So welcome to Frontline Health. I'm Dan Skorbach. Stay healthy, America.